Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lotkin. Things are a lot different in the White House than they were certainly under Reagan and probably under any president. So over the weekend, they found a white substance that was later tested and now verified as cocaine. And there was a visit by Mr. Biden's, President Biden's son Hunter. I wonder if there's any correlation.
Yeah, like there's
And
any
so,
question. Yeah, like there's any question that it's Hunter's cocaine. I mean,
nah, like
there,
Keith Richards came over my house and there's all of a sudden there's some drugs. No, it wasn't him. There you
right.
go.
Hunter Biden gets a sweetheart deal, comes to celebrate at the White House, and leaves coke behind.
You think? I mean, and there's got to be ways to prove. I mean, there's cameras, there's check-in, check-out logs. I think, and I think we talked about this on Carnival on our podcast. I believe that he's increasingly going to become more unhinged as the pressure mounts, and I think there's going to be more issues related to him, especially as the press stops covering for Joe.
Well, I think the problem is bigger than that. Because if you listen to everything that's been said about Hunter, it's, oh, he had a drug problem, he's in recovery.
Yep.
It was all in the past, and now he said, well, clearly it's not in the past. He's still doing cocaine and he's doing it at the White House.
I think that's an excellent point because it was obviously positioned that it's a lot more palatable if it's in the past, right? Oh,
sure.
You got a DUI, but that's in the past. George W. Bush. I guess it was when he was in his 30s, and it was in the past. He stopped drinking for like 30 years. But you're right. This is not in the past, and it also gets into the whole thing about how do you accumulate all that money, all those connections, when the guy's just a cokehead.
Yeah, and Joe Biden's only comments on Hunter has been how much he loves his son, how proud he is of his son. You know what? I'm a parent. If Joe truly loved Hunter, he would have put him in rehab.
I 100% enabled him, and he benefited from his interaction with world leaders. And I agree with you that I think they were crappy parents. I think he was never, we talked about this years ago as we go over our 250th podcast. He's really not a nice guy. He's always been an SOB, and I don't think he really gives a shit about Hunter or anyone. How does that sound? But I do believe that.
Yeah, I don't think he really cares about anybody but himself.
100%. But, it is disturbing because I don't think this country can take 4 more years of this clown, but yet we have Donald Trump who, well, let's talk about this first. Do you think he's going to be the nominee? Very early, I get it.
I don't know. It really is too early to tell. If you look at past elections, the nominee was never the front runner at this point.
I just hope so because over the weekend, I'm sorry, he just became unhinged, tweeting all this crap or with True Social. Even had F Joe Biden. I mean, calling for uprising in the streets. It's just tiring, and he's the only Republican besides Pence who could lose to Biden.
Yeah, if Trump is the nominee, the only thing that can save him is if there is a strong, independent third party candidate that pulls votes away from the Democrats. Now, this is possible, but America would be best served if neither Biden nor Trump were the nominees. Both of these folks need to go away. We need a clean start.
100%. And I think what really bothers me about Trump is he's very selfish, and they're both the same.
Oh, yes.
Biden and Trump are very selfish. He doesn't really give a shit about the health of America, America's. It's all about him. And I'm sorry, we talked about this a billion times on Carnivore Radio, and he effed it up. He lost to a retard. It's time for you to go. And you did lose, Trump. Yeah, there's always irregularities.
It,
It never even should have been that close. Please go away. And if you run again, we're in big trouble because I think he's the baggage of all. And also, it has him on. There's more indictments coming. He's just done.
yeah, people are tired of the sideshow. He's a clown. He does not care about the presidency. He cares about getting revenge on the Democrats that tortured him and dragged his name through the mud. And I understand that. But you know what? There are other ways to do that besides running for president. And there are better ways to do that that won't screw over the American people.
Agreed 100%, but he's also lacks any kind of, there's middle school students that have more judgment than him. He's not a dumb person. Biden's dumb. He's not. But he just has no common sense. Like when he lost the election, if he had a nice fireside chat saying, I don't agree with the results, but I'm an American first, blah, 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 blah. The same thing with COVID. He just became unhinged. January 6th, I'm sorry, was a total lack of judgment. And that alone, he should be disqualified because it shows, as I said, a total lack of judgment, and
Donald
I think he's forever scarred.
Donald Trump needs to take a page, and I never thought I'd say this, from George W. Bush.
Just
Because
go paint some
yes,
pictures.
when George left office, went away. He was quiet. He went off into retirement to enjoy himself. Trump needs to go away.
He's incapable of that. But again, it's very unfortunate because there are some really good candidates on the Republican side. Um,
There are
very
good
artic-
candidates on both sides. If Biden and Trump would just get out of the way, we could
yeah, it's
actually have qualified people running for president.
God forbid, huh? So
Yeah.
that is something that really does disturb me. I think we're pretty much straight shooters on the show. And yes, it's your days ended, Donald, and you are not really qualifications, just but emotionally, you're not emotionally qualified to be president. Sorry, you had your 4 years. Yeah, you got screwed. There's no question about it. I'm talking about all the investigations, the dossier, all that nonsense. But still, you could have handled it so much better. And your last year as president was a disaster.
Yeah. And, again, it's all about his ego. And quite frankly, even as not a politician, let's forget that he was president. An FOIA request will get him a copy of the Mueller report, will get him a copy of the Durham report. And most of those reports have been already released to the public. Well, you know what? Civil suits are a lot easier to win than criminal suits. He could go after Hillary for slander. He could go after all of the people involved in the Steele dossier. He could go after the people on The View if he wanted for slander. Using this, take his, get his vindication and not drag the American people through the mud.
That is amazingly well said, and something I did not think about. That yes, again, I think that he just he's. I think he's increasingly becoming unhinged. But as you're a sober-headed person, that just makes all the sense in the world. Go after Hillary. That would be amazing. I'd love that. She's a deadbeat. She's despicable, and she put the country through a lot of shit that she knew was fake. So that'd be
Yes.
great. But speaking of the
And
state
and
of the,
and in fact, you're talking about Hillary. It was 7 years ago today that they decided that yes, she broke the law with the emails and destroying the phones, but they decided to let her off.
of course, why not? Uh, but speaking of the state and how Biden's presidency or lack thereof, only 30% of Americans have faith in government, which is not really surprising given the last 5, 6 years. And actually, 64% of Americans think that we're headed in the wrong direction, which I can understand. I mean, who are
In the
the
right,
other
I mean the right
35%?
direction.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, sorry,
Uh,
sorry. Yeah, 60 only. No, no, only
No,
64% think we're headed in the wrong direction.
right. Well,
Yeah. Okay.
that's not an only. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's crazy. So I can't understand what the 35% that think we're headed in the right direction. They must be partying with Hunter.
Could be. It's Hunter and his buddies, Joe's buddies, all the people making money off of the Biden family. They think everything's fine. I'm sure, Vladimir Putin supporters probably think everything's fine with the way the US is going.
And
Same thing
China
with
loves it. You
China.
can't get any.
Yes.
Oh, he loves it. And if you're insulated at Martha's Vineyard, you have to have no. There's no repercussions for this buffoon in the White House. You probably think it's great too because he's hitting all the high notes in terms of wokeism as the economy and our national security goes down the shitter.
Yeah. The decisions made by this administration are not only unbelievable, but they don't even see the damage they're doing. Jill Biden just gave this big speech about how Joe is the education president. Are you kidding me? Our kids are scoring lower on standardized tests than ever before.
By the
They
way, just to
cannot
interject
read.
something, he's supposed to be, he the person, the champion of minorities, and again, Jill saying he's the education. Only 15% of middle school African American students are basically considered literate. So 85% cannot read at grade level.
We
Excellent.
we have cities. Baltimore reported this. Chicago reported this. That no, that's zero middle school students were able to pass math and reading at their grade level. Zero. This is
And
the
how come that's
education
never
president.
articulated? How come no one knows about that? That to me is, I mean, you have a whole generation, if you get right down to it, that only 15% are in any way poised for success. If you can't read or write, your future is not exactly bright. That rhymes, and that's not on purpose. But yes, that really does not bode well for a whole generation, upcoming generation of African American students or
No, it
people.
does. Well, it does. It's not just African Americans. It's across the board.
Okay,
And
but the
no,
figure I quoted
the
about the only
right.
15%
Yes,
was African
that's
American.
African American. But no, the only people that this bodes well for are Democrats who are pushing the idea that you can't succeed without government help. You need them to support you.
Yes, and you also need affirmative action for you to get into the college that you should. You're entitled to go into, but
Yeah,
that was
no,
overturned by the Supreme Court,
that was
along with a lower court judgment preventing the Biden administration from colluding essentially with big tech.
yeah, the courts are taking the Biden administration to task. The affirmative action wasn't the administration, it was Harvard and UNC that were
Yes.
the subjects of the lawsuit. And yes, of course, Ketanji, I'm blanking on her last name, the Supreme Court justice, um, who was talking.
Sotomayor,
No, Ketanji is her first name.
the one that was
But
just put in.
yes,
Okay.
she of course is up in arms about how dare they take away affirmative action. Of course, she's for affirmative action. She was the affirmative action candidate for the Supreme Court.
There's no question about it. She
She
never
has
even
made
divulged her scores. But
But
Sotomayor had a similar reaction. She was another
and
affirmative
she's another
action.
one.
Yes,
Both of these have made such moronic comments over the years that they have showed they were less qualified for the court than Merrick Garland was.
and that's a pretty low bar.
But we are seeing so now. And I mean, let's be very clear about what the Supreme Court said. They did not say it is okay to discriminate. In fact, they said you cannot use race as a factor. Why? Because the programs that Harvard and UNC and many other colleges were using discriminated against Asian Americans,
Yes.
discriminated against Jewish Americans. So all they were doing was switching who they were going to discriminate against. The Supreme Court said you cannot discriminate against anybody based on race. You have to use merit.
But that, again, that gets back to your earlier comment. That flies right in the face of the liberal agenda because they need a whole population of people to be victims.
Yes. And it is absolutely amazing how many there was somebody that came TikTok influencer
Oh,
that
God.
was going off about how she feels victimized by the 4th of July. And there were oh, we shouldn't be celebrating our independence because everything is against us and we're such victims. It's like, no, you know what? You are only a victim if you make yourself a victim. Nobody made you a victim. The
No,
country
I
didn't.
disagree on one thing. Let me interject something. And that is no, if you've been told your whole life by media, by the liberal democratic establishment, that you are a victim, it's hard not to believe it. I mean,
It's
you grew up on it. I mean, from the day you were born, you're a victim. You go to a Philadelphia school. What do you think they indoctrinate them in? Oh, you're a victim. You're up against it. It's not your fault. So you can't do anything about it. Of course, because it's
uh,
self serving and it's really the ultimate form of racism.
Of course, if you're telling people, well, you're not good enough to do this on your own, you need our help. Seriously? I mean, and the thing is, I mean, yes, it's difficult when you're told over and over again, but I'm sorry, that's just an excuse.
Oh, I didn't say it was
Everybody,
valid, but I
right,
think that's what
everybody
happened.
has the capability of looking at this and going, you know what? I can do this. This is something I've done from a very young age, and I know a lot of people that do this. When somebody tells me, oh, that can't be done, oh, you can't do that, the first thing I'm going to do is do that just to prove them wrong. And there are millions of people that do that, and they're the successful ones. You think
Yeah,
anybody believed that Elon Musk could create an electric car or that he could shoot a rocket into space and get it to land on a ship so it could be reused? Do you think anybody thought Mark Zuckerberg could create a platform that the entire world could communicate on? Of course not.
well, also, I think it robs certain groups in America of America had this like melting pot I should process, I'll use that term, is that yes, if you're Jewish or other people, many people, immigrants, whatever you want to call it, yeah, you might not have had, in other words, you have to prove yourself. It makes you stronger as a people and makes America stronger. Now you've had 60, almost 70 years of a permanent underclass, starting with the Great Society. Yeah, you got a problem. You got 75% of African American children are born without a father in the house. That was the mirror image of that 65 years ago with LBJ's Great Society. So you see the effects. These things have consequences.
Right. And that's a great example though of what I was talking about, that what you're being told you don't have to listen to. I know an amazing African American gentleman who has created a nonprofit whose only purpose of this nonprofit is to encourage responsibility and fatherhood among African Americans. I know another amazing African American man who does a podcast about being a single father. It's like these are folks that know that this is bullshit, that they don't need government help, that the
But they're
system's
really
not
not given a
against
voice.
them.
They're
They
not
went,
given the
no,
voice they should.
no, they went out and they created their own voice. They created
Okay,
podcasts. They created nonprofits. They can do this. The mainstream media no longer has the hold that it once did.
I
And
certainly hope
people
so.
people are saying enough is enough. You know what? This is a problem. Government says their solution and they're not actually doing anything. We are going to step up and fix the problems. And that's what we need. We need more people to do that and say, you know what? These idiots in government, they don't matter.
And I'd have to question: is there really compassion on the left? I'd say not, because um, you're really condemning a whole generation. Now it's been generations of people to a life of dependency, which is the ultimate of abuse.
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that anybody, I mean, going back to Reagan, I mean, remember, he said the biggest lie is I'm from the government, I'm here to help. This is not new. And
Without any question.
if you believe anything coming out of the White House or any politician, and I don't care which party's in charge, this goes for both parties. If you are getting your information from politicians, you are being lied to. You are not getting the facts. You
Or the
need to
media,
go.
I'll throw that in too.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say the media because that covers a lot of places, including us. So yeah, I mean there are
I
media
mean the
sources, but
mainstream media.
yeah, I mean if you're listening to just the cable news channels or the three networks, yeah, you're not getting the information. People need to start doing their own research, and the fact of the matter is a couple of minutes on the internet, you can find the facts. When I was in high school, we learned research methods. We learned what primary sources were. In my journalism classes, primary sources were hammered into us. People need to learn what primary sources are. Stop getting your news from somebody's tweet and stop getting news from a commentary that doesn't know what a primary source is.
Well said. And we were talking about, cities like Philadelphia. Well, a Philadelphia shooter, and we were also talking about mainstream media. What are the chances that anyone's going to hear that he was a BLM supporter? I'd say
None.
zero.
They're focused on gun control.
Guns. Yep.
That's how they're spinning this, because anytime anything happens with a gun, oh, it was the gun that did it. It had nothing to do with the person. And
No.
I mean, come on. How seriously can you take a president talking about gun control when his son illegally obtained guns?
Well, how can you take anything
No,
Biden says? I
no.
mean, no, no one who's has an IQ above 80 would take this guy seriously, and the world doesn't take him seriously. Look at the threat, the increasing threat of our adversaries, and in particular Iran. They just captured I believe it was an oil tanker. Do you think they can? They did the same thing with Obama. You think they are scared of
Oh,
Joe
of course not.
Biden? Are you kidding me?
If any world leader had any respect or any fear of Joe Biden, it was erased with his live interview on MSNBC just last week, when the interview came to an end and he wandered around the set, not even going off camera, wandered across the camera.
I thought that
Everybody
was
saw this.
precious. I
I
thought
mean,
that was precious. And you know something? I think it's excellent because he always goes on MSNBC because he has puffball questions. But how do you objectively see that as a liberal and say, oh, this guy? And you know something? It really is a tragedy. It's tragic because this guy is totally out to lunch, and it's scary. It's not. It's no joke. I mean, it's
it is,
funny, but
I
it's no joke. How does
I
that
don't
sound?
I don't know which I find scarier. The fact that he is out to lunch, or the sheer number of people that know he's out to lunch and are covering for him, like Jill Biden. Jill Biden really should have pulled him aside and said, you know what? You're not running again.
I would agree, but she's an opportunistic piece of shit.
Yeah.
She doesn't care. She loves the power. She loved the money. Um, She was taking the money. She was benefiting from the money when him and Hunter and the rest of his
Yep.
shitty family were selling America down the drain with their adversaries. So that's Jill Biden, Doctor Jill, who misspelled words on her thesis. Hello. Oh yeah, it was one.
It's
It
that.
was an episode with Tucker. He actually had the thesis or doctoral thesis. Bad grammar, misspelled words. It was like, are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, you're going back to her thesis. She did that more recently on a card that came out of her office. And she's a doctor of education who
Oh
can't
please,
spell.
it's a
This is
joke. The whole thing's a joke.
I think that says more about our education system than anything else.
It also shows um, about our political class. I'm sure she got into wherever she went to school. She would never have gotten in there if it wasn't for that she was the wife of the vice president or the wife of the Senate or Senator Biden and got in knowing that the
Well,
school knew there'd be some financial
no,
gain to it.
I think I got to disagree with you on that because I'm pretty sure she got her doctorate before she married Joe Biden.
That I stand corrected. Some way she got her doctorate, but I don't know how you get a doctorate with misspelled words and grammatical errors. But that's just me. I thought a doctorate was supposed to mean something or be something.
Well, I mean, a college degree used to mean something.
Yeah, that's a good point
AOC has a college degree, a bachelor's
in
degree
economics.
in economics, and she doesn't have any idea how an economy works. So, I
Well,
mean,
Biden doesn't either, but I just was watching the press briefing because I wanted to see some funny anecdotes about the cocaine. I wonder who left
anecdotes.
it, but they had yes, they had a whole thing about they had a big chart about manufacturing, and they were touting Bidenomics. That's almost that's talk about out of touch.
It is. I mean, it is absolutely amazing how they can tout. And I find it hysterical the comments that they make about Biden because it's, oh, you know, the inflation rate has come down from to 4% from 11%. It's like, yes, but you're the ones that pushed it up to 11%, and it's not down. 4% is it's slowing, but it's still 4% year over year, which means it's 4% higher than that 11% of the from the year before.
Anyone that goes
It's
into a grocery store, anyone that buys anything, I'll give you a stupid example, but it's true. I get Cumberland Farms. I get it every day on the way to work. I get their iced tea, 99 cents. Now it's $1.39. That's almost a 40% increase. If you eggs, anything you can get, you
yeah,
can't go to the supermarket and spend less than $100.
every time I have been at the supermarket or a couple of times restaurants lately, every time I see the amount that we're spending, it's like, oh my God, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
And
what if you were on a fixed income? What if you retired?
right.
I mean, you got to be scared shitless.
And, and the funny thing is, at the end of last year, the administration was taking credit for how much they were going to be increasing Social Security payments. The administration has no say over what Social Security payments do. The amount of payments is locked in to the inflation rate. So the reason that people got more in Social Security and got more in disability in these government programs is because everything was so much more expensive. So
Exactly. So it's
it's
like
not
giving
like
it a
they got this great gift. They were
no. There's no
barely
gift.
no, they were barely able to keep up with the inflation rate.
No question, but that's Bidenomics, and
Yep.
again, there's really no one in charge. A bunch of maybe 20 something Marxists, and basically controlling things at the White House. So I'm sure to them, not knowing anything about economics, I'm sure they're stupid enough to tout something and coin it Bidenomics. Very nice. Um, Also, talking about incompetency, we have the 4th of July travel disasters, all the major airports, canceled flights, you name it. And I think that's also, it's obviously not directly his fault, but Mayor Pete, do you think his stock is basically plummeted?
Yeah, I mean
Another affirmative action case.
he has faced crisis after crisis, and he has done absolutely nothing. For some of the crises, he was actually AWOL, which is unexcusable. But this was just another. And what really gets me is that everybody saw this coming. They were talking about the 4th of July travel problems for weeks. Some of the airlines actually did this into account and changed flights, made some adjustments in their processes. Did the TSA do anything? No. Did the air traffic controllers do anything? No. Did the Secretary of Transportation do anything? No.
Well, I
This
think he's not really into the job. I think he just wanted to be in the limelight. He's really not, rolling up his sleeves and everything. He was on maternity leave for like 3 months during the whole supply chain disaster. Yeah, I think he's really doesn't really give a shit about what he's doing for the job. He's looking at bigger things.
I don't know what bigger things he's been looking at. There's really nowhere he can go. There's no way anybody's ever going to vote for him for president.
I certainly hope not, but I think in his delusional mind, he ran for president once. He was the mayor of what was it, Gary, Indiana, or something, or
Uh,
what was it,
I don't even
South
remember.
Bend,
But
I think.
yeah, but I mean, as mayor, most of the country didn't know how bad a job he could do. Now he's front page news all across the country.
Yeah, I think his ship has sailed. I think it's completely over. Um, Another group that we really do not like, deservingly so, is Ben and Jerry. What a bunch of disingenuous pieces of shit. They just July 4th, they were saying the United States should give back the land to the indigenous people. Why don't you go smoke some more joints, Ben and Jerry, and go to a couple more Dead concerts or Fish. I hope, and I heard a I hope they become the next Bud Light. They're pushing the envelope, but they've already made their money. They don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped eating Ben and Jerry's years ago because of the stupidity that you know was coming out of the two of them. Not only are they self-hating anti-Semitic Jews, but apparently they hate America, where they made all their money as well. But
Exactly.
this is something that's I find very interesting, because you hear this a lot from the left of, oh, we need to give back the land we took from the Native Americans. Well, I would love for everybody who's listening to go watch a show called The Men Who Built America Frontiersmen. This is on the History Channel. You can also find it on Hulu. And what you're going to find out is that during the Revolutionary War, the Native American tribes sided with the British against the colonists. And it was the treaty at the end of the war that allowed the colonists to take this land. the Native Americans never honored the treaties. They were still attacking despite the fact that they were on the losing side of the war. Now, I'm not saying this justifies the way Native Americans were treated past that, but when you watch these shows, the ideas that these were peace loving people that, we took advantage of goes out the window.
Well, you need that as the because it has to fit the liberal
Right.
agenda,
The
which is to hate everything about America and disrupt and undermine any sense of a cohesive history, which
right,
allows the big government, which they so love, to fill the void,
right,
both in history and the family.
yeah, the Native Americans were slave owners, and they didn't just capture whites to make them slaves. They captured members of other tribes. The tribes didn't work together until almost 1812, and that was when they were trying to unite against America.
Well, again, it doesn't fit into a narrative,
Right.
and I think it's a bigger issue of Ben and Jerry, two fat, spoiled, entitled pieces of shit, self-hating Jews that need to go away. They're really despicable people. I really despise them. I
They
would never
really
buy their
are.
shitty artery clogging ice cream anyway. It's disgusting.
No, I again, as I said, I haven't bought their ice cream in years. I am hoping people start to boycott it because you know what? It's time that this bullshit stopped. They
I
do
hope they
not
do become the Bud Light of ice cream.
let him be the Bud Light of ice cream.
I'd love
It
that.
it doesn't look like Budweiser is going to be recovering anytime soon.
Nope.
And quite frankly, you know what? Ben and Jerry have so much money. They could be buying land and giving it back to the Indians if they
No, that's
wanted.
always we always talk about that,
It's
Dr. Lopkin. When you're liberal, it's do as I say, not as I do. Just like Elizabeth Warren, basically I've lived with the strain of being Native American, an abject liar who
yep.
basically is the ultimate racist because she used basically took away the opportunities for legitimate Native Americans to have positions for her white ass to go to Harvard.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable what's been coming out of the left's mouths. And the simple truth is if you look up the facts, if you read your history, if you actually studied economics, if you studied science and basic biology, you would know that none of the stuff that they are claiming is true.
Well, don't you find it
Do the
interesting and funny?
research.
No, that they always say that the right conservatives don't understand science and we don't understand global warming. They're the ones who say that a man could be a woman and basically menstruate. I don't know how that happens, but what can I tell you?
Yeah,
I'll leave it to their great judgment.
yeah, I mean, there's been so many of them that have testified before Congress that were unable to define what a woman is. And to the point that this has become a running joke. Rob Schneider has a new comedy special, and in it, he talks about the fact that they cannot define what a woman is. And he says it's a very simple definition: a woman is somebody who will take something you did 10 years ago and hold it against you now in an argument.
Nice. I got to see that. It's pretty funny. Speaking of funny, De Blasio and his wife are now separating.
Yeah, they separated, and I really hope they do go through some sort of formal divorce. There's been some question over whether they will or not, but I want forensic accountants to go over everything they have, because maybe the forensic accountants can find all of that New York money that his wife lost.
I think that would be hysterical. I think they were a couple both dumber than hell. uh, both completely disingenuous. They really should not separate because it is really truly a match made in heaven. Dumb and Dumber, unbelievable. Uh, so that is interesting. And then we also have the on a much lighter note, we have two things. Tom Cruise with his Mission Impossible movie. Is he saving once again the movie industry this summer on the heels of Indiana Jones, which was not a flop, but doing a lot less than
Yeah, so
expected.
so far none of the summer so-called blockbusters have done the business that they started to they were hoped to do. Honestly, I don't know that Tom Cruise is going to fare any better. The early reviews of the new Mission Impossible movie are not good. It's basically just a whole bunch of action scenes stitched together with no real story. Which, let's
Wait, I
face
mean,
it,
interject. It's
that's
not a
pretty much
serious
all the
topic.
summer blockbusters.
Yeah, but you know something. Sometimes it's time, like Pirates of the Caribbean with another genius, Johnny Depp, and there's like a it's something just it runs its course. It runs its course. I mean, what is this, Mission Impossible 7 or something? Come on, enough.
Something like that. Yeah, it's like
God,
I I don't know that anybody is really expecting this to save the box office. And
I meant
some of
that.
some of
This.
the yeah, some of the numbers from the box office though have been absolutely amazing. Um Disney, between what they thought they were going to do from The Little Mermaid, Guardians of the Galaxy, uh and there was another one, I'm blanking on what the third movie was. They lost $1 billion so far. Warner Brothers lost $200 million just from the Flash movie. So none of these movies are doing well. And it's about time that Hollywood starts listening and going, oh, you know what? Maybe we should stop pushing this woke agenda because people aren't coming to the movies
You know
anymore.
something? I think they don't understand. They don't really want. They actually hate Middle America, and they're so out of touch that it'll become. Hopefully, it's not going to be too late. But if you're just an average American, I really don't. I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. I don't really care. I'll do something that's fun. Go see a movie, whatever. But then
Right.
do I really want to shell over $30 if I have a couple kids or whatever to go to a movie, or $50 and just get some woke shit shoved on my throat and my kids? No, I want to be entertained. It's very simple. And I don't understand why they don't have stockholder revolt by companies like Disney. Talk about screwing something up that's almost impossible to screw up, but because of their fixation on wokeism and liberalism, they screwed up Disney.
Well,
Hello.
it's not just the wokeism, though, and you hit on something as you were talking. $30 to go see a movie. And actually, quite frankly, $30 is cheap because once you get the popcorn and you get the entertainment, if you've got a family of four, when the prices of everything else is going up, are you really going to take the family? Or are you going to spend the $10 a month for one of the streaming services and watch all month?
And with the improvement of technology, I personally would rather just watch a movie at home. I mean, I just, it's more of an enjoyable experience. And I think
Yes.
it's really kind of interesting because I mean, I truly believe the day of the movie theater is pretty much over anyway. You just
Well,
put something, it's on life support.
I am a big fan of classic Hollywood, classic movies, stuff from the 40s, the 50s, even going up to the early 70s. And so I was watching Turner Classic Movies over this
Love that,
weekend.
by the way. Totally love
Yeah,
it.
and Tom Hanks made a very good point. He was talking about making movies and what the movies is. And everybody always says, oh, yeah, going to the movies is a communal experience. It's about the connections with the audience. And Tom Hanks actually said, no, no, it isn't. And it never was. It was always a one-to-one connection between the creators of the movie and the audience member. It wasn't how the audience members were seeing it as a community. It was one to one. And now with streaming services and high def television and amazing audio systems that you can hook up to your TV, it's like now people are actually watching these movies one to one. And it's just a natural progression. And Hollywood's going to have to come to terms with that.
Well said, yes. And I think it's also, you talk about Hollywood real quick. I was thinking about this. I don't know why it popped into my head when I was driving, doing some errands earlier today. And it's like the Hollywood, if you look, it's almost like going through a time warp or something. You look at you talk about, Turner Classic. You look at Hollywood of the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even into the early, I mean, they were pro American. They were doing war
Oh,
bond
yes.
rallies. I mean, now they'd probably be burning bonds if we were, God forbid, at war.
I know during the World War II, during that classic era, movies were patriotic. And I mean, it's not really new that that stopped. It came to a close in the 50s when we had the McCarthy hearings, and for good reason. The McCarthy hearings in House Un-American Committee needed to be stopped, but it really fell apart during the 70s,
Yes.
when you had the hippies come of age and start making movies. You had a whole lot of anti-America movies, and again, it's part of the brainwashing of America.
No question.
We've talked about it in the educational system. We've talked about it in the media. Hollywood was part of this. And you are starting to see a big pushback to this, going, no, we don't want government help. We don't want you telling us what to think. And that was something that was very important last week. One of the Supreme Court decisions we did not talk about was in Colorado. They said a web designer did not have to create custom designs to promote gay marriage because she did not believe in gay marriage. So she could not turn away a customer just in general based on
But you didn't have to
LGBTQ,
make a
but
build to order
right,
product.
that that build to order was her freedom of speech, and that's what the Supreme Court defended. And I said this when the case came down. I do not understand it in this case. I did not understand it when the case went to the Supreme Court about the gay couple that the bakery that wouldn't,
Yeah.
also in both in Colorado, by the way. Um, if somebody does not want to serve you, why are you fighting to give them money?
I think
It's
it's
not
all
like
set up.
it's not like the bakery had a monopoly. It's not like this web designer had a monopoly. There's hundreds of them, in just their local area. Find somebody that you agree with to give your money to.
I would agree with that 100%. I think it was a very interesting decision. And I think it's also funny that the left, their heads are exploding over the Supreme Court because after 30 years of a liberal biased Supreme Court, you know, basically, be careful what you wish for because I think it's hysterical. Like AOC talking, they're an American. It's just totally hysterical.
Well, of course, AOC thinks they're un American because she doesn't understand how government works. She thinks the president can sign an executive order to do anything he wants. She thinks the Supreme Court are legislators that have to follow what the population says they want. It's like, no, the Supreme Court are not legislators. They follow the law. And this court has done a very good job at taking unpopular positions when that's what the law says. And they've been very impartial despite what the left wants you to believe, because they also found against the Republicans gerrymandering election maps. they have found in favor of the Biden administration on several occasions. So this has been an incredibly unbiased Supreme Court following the letter of the law. And that's where the problem comes in because none of these liberals understand the law anymore. And in fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg talked at length on numerous occasions how the Supreme Court was eventually going to overturn Roe v. Wade because it was bad case law
Yes.
and Congress needed to do their job and ratify it, which they never did. And of course, the left goes, well, that's because the Republicans wouldn't vote for it. No, that's not why. Because in the first 2 years of the Obama administration, the Democrats had a super majority. The Republicans had no power whatsoever. And in fact, during the Obama campaign, he said one of the first things he would do would be to ratify Roe v. Wade. And when the Democrats took office, they did nothing. Why?
Well,
Because they wanted it as a fundraising issue.
there's no question about it. Yes, it rallies their base. They always wanted in play, and they could have rectified the situation. Um, Again, a very troubling note, especially when we have no American leadership. The uprising in Russia against Putin uh, draws into question the security of their arsenal, nuclear
I
that
don't
is.
think I don't think there's anything secure about the Russian arsenal,
There
and
you go.
it's not just the Wagner group. Something that's important to remember is that the Wagner group are mercenaries.
Yes.
So there's a very good chance that the entire coup was paid for by somebody. Now, did we pay for it? Maybe, I don't know. I think it's more likely that Putin's opponents within the Russian government paid for it. But Russia is not a secure place, and it hasn't been for quite a long time. And you're seeing this because, let's face it, there are no troops left in Russia. They're all basically in the Ukraine fighting, and Ukraine is holding them off. So, this great evil empire, they've fallen apart. They're a shell.
Oh no, there was in 1980s, 1970s. You could make a legitimate case that they could. They had every chance of overrunning Europe. Superior numbers, superior armament. And that's all they had is oil and military. Well, the military equation is completely gone.
Yeah, now all they've got is oil, which,
There you
quite
go.
frankly, if we had somebody intelligent in the White House, they would
Yeah,
ramp up American drilling and eliminate the Russian oil threat.
but that goes against the green agenda. Speaking of transportation in terms of oil, and our Mayor Pete will end with a interesting um, note that the FAA approved a flying car, which I think is a little scary because when you look at the dumbing down of America, half the people can't even drive on the roads, God forbid, in the air.
Yeah, a flying car scares the hell out of me. Anybody who's driven in the Northeast knows people can't even drive in 2 dimensions, never mind three. Um, I don't think they'll ever take off for just that reason. Um, People are not capable of taking off. And
No,
again, could you imagine drunk flying?
God. Well, imagine Hunter at the wheel.
Oh God.
Brutal. And no, it is interesting is as we're doing this podcast, I'm looking at my computer and the Philadelphia mayor, I love this. You can't beat this. Blames ghost guns on violence in his city. Are you kidding me?
Well,
This,
the Philadelphia DA, who has refused to prosecute criminals, blamed the Republicans for not doing anything about gun control. Well, we have gun control laws on the books. Maybe if you prosecuted people for them, this wouldn't happen.
that is true. The demise of another great, once great American city. Oh well.
Yeah, it's we're seeing more and more. They're calling it the death spiral of American cities. San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. And
Well, even
once
cities that you wouldn't suspect. Like my friend was on a business trip to Austin, like the Boston of
oh,
the South. He
Aus
was
Aus
shocked.
10 years ago, Austin was the best city in America. I was actually considering moving there, and it all fell apart when the Austin City Council defunded the police.
There you go.
And now it became another one of these shitholes where the criminals have more rights than the citizens do.
Well, you bring up a good point, Dr. Lopkin, because when you look at it, you don't have the need really to. We talked about this on a previous podcast to have people, going to work in a high rise, a la Philadelphia, New York, whatever. So there's really no big need or driving force to have the traditional city. Everything can be farmed out. I think you're going to have an increasing situation where cities just become shittier and shittier, and
Well,
you
we
force fewer and fewer, let's just say, paying customers out of big cities, and you have what's left is the riffraff.
they've talked a lot about that in regards to New York because people have not gone back to the office in New York. And when you don't go back to the office in New York, a lot of those folks don't even live in New York anymore. They live in New Jersey, they live in Connecticut. So there's a huge tax drain on New York. On top of that, the real estate is not worth what it was because there's so many vacancies. So they're not getting the real estate taxes that they used to.
Hmm.
The city's income is going down, down, down. The further it goes down, the fewer services they can offer, which pushes more people out of the city.
And
And
but then you
that's
also combine that with a growing underclass in all these cities. It's the perfect storm, isn't it, Dr. Lobson?
Yeah, it is the death spiral. And talking about, these vacant office buildings, the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with an annual study, and they found out that the average person that is working from home is only actually working about 2.5 hours a day. And this is why productivity has been falling. Now,
Oh,
to
go ahead.
to
Sorry.
to put that in context, the average worker in an office only worked a little under 4 hours a day, but it's still a huge productivity drop, and that's part of what's been a drag on the economy. Why, people aren't going to work? It's like, well, I don't really want to put the work in. Even if I'm at the office, I don't want to put the work in. And this
Well,
is
I
what's
think
going
whoever
on.
thought that working from home was going to be a good, like there's a company I used to work for, Stanley Black and Decker. They really don't have. It's hard to believe, but they don't really have an office anymore. So all you're doing is have people. How do you build a team? How do you have like a group? A
It
cohesive group. Also, it's really funny. It's real quick. Is I was walking around the reservoir and I bump into someone. I go, "Hey, what are you retired?" He goes, "No, I'm working from home."
Right. Yeah, people are out. They're not really working. Now, you can build cohesive teams remotely. I actually work with companies to help them do that. But you have to put the effort in. And in most cases, management is not putting in that effort to build those teams. It's just, oh, okay, you could work from home, and people are left to their own devices. And that's what's not working.
Agreed. Well, another our 251st, correct?
Yep.
Very good. In the docket, it's sealed up. That's excellent. And we'll be back next week with another edition of Carnivore Bites and talk about how our listeners, our growing listener base, can contact us
You can
and
con-
listen to us.
you can contact us at xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also catch us on the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. We respond to messages there, so let us know what you're thinking. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Thank our listeners, and we'll be back next week.
We'll see you then.